Okay, stop screen.
Go ahead.
Well, good morning, everyone. This is Andrew Williams Jr. and another conversation with Andrew Williams Jr. This time on Monday, July the 4th. This is our regularly scheduled time with retired General Arnold Bray and architect Michael Rendler. However, we have a special guest this morning, Mr. Herschel Daniels Jr. So with no further ado, let me see if I can share my screen briefly and give us the introduction first here of General Bray. General Arnold Gordon Bray will be our special weekly speaker, but today we do have Mr. Herschel Daniels Jr. So I think without further ado, Herschel, it might be very appropriate if I take this opportunity to briefly share my screen about your profile, and then we'll turn it over to you. Give me just 1 second here.
We do have a couple of guests that I'll talk to in a second.
All right, let me just share my screen and get your picture up, and then you can take it from here. Okay, yes. Ball to your
All
court.
right, so I'm chairman of Friends of the African Union, but I'm also, along with Guy DeJunkin and others, foundational members of Friends of the United Nations Permanent Forum on People of African Descent, which was created on August 2nd by the United Nations for all 1.6 billion people of African descent. We have created an onboarding mechanism that will start on August 25th, 2022, for that mechanism. Friends of the United Nations Permanent Forum of People of African Descent. My organization, Friends of the African Union, where I'm chairman and managing director of the African Diaspora Directorate, acceded to this based on the work that started in 2014 to create such an organization. And so now in that organization, on this July 4th, it comes to be a day in which Guy DeJunkin, who is the executive director for the Center for Peace, the UNESCO Center for Peace, like EDFU, a organization in consultative status in the United Nations, and His Excellency Sharif Balde, who is a representative of Friends of the African Union and the African Union, that we come together on this day. Whereas you may not know, but having served in the United States military, I'm among the over 2 million American honorably discharged of African descent living in the country, that we who wrote the check of our lives to be cashed as needed in decision-making by those in charge of the military or in the government of those forces of the United States, and that knowledgeable that my dad, the late Herschel Daniels Sr., was a veteran himself, Korean War era, wished that I serve as an officer upon entering the armed forces, but I did not do so, as I enlisted with my training cadre, aware that some 4 years away from today, July 4th, 2022, some 250 years ago, that the founding fathers did sign the American Act of Independence from our then masters in England. Recovering this day after my 8th heart surgery on June 29th, 22, come to this conversation with a review of that Declaration of Independence, realizing the imperative of a sustained and coordinated approach and ownership of the African diaspora related programs and projects so as to promote their effective implementation and impact. It should be based on the aspirations contained in the American Declaration of independence, and that we hold these to be self-evident, that all human beings are created equal, that they are all endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, and that among these are life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Furthermore, we subscribed to the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights. We listened to the United States President Joe Biden's speech of 2021 message to the 34th African Union Summit participants when he said via video, because of COVID, I am honored to send the best wishes of the peoples of the United States in advance of the 34th African Union Summit. This past year has shown us how interconnected our world is and how our fates are bound together. That's why my administration is committed to rebuilding our partnership around the world and re-engaging with the international institutions like the African Union. We must all work together to advance our shared vision of a better future, a future of growing trade and investment that advances prosperity for all our nations, a future that
Herschel, we lost your voice. Come back.
human rights, girls, be individuals, peoples with disabilities, and people of every ethnic background, religion, and heritage to reach this future. We must also confront the serious challenge we face.
Herschel, come back. Your voice is distorted. The audience, please bear with us. Herschel Daniels, we're no longer hearing you.
Okay.
We lost you for about a minute, Herschel. Herschel, we lost you for about a minute.
Okay, so you can read the document into Andrew, but the shortness of it is to say that now we are coming together with a plan through a new organization to create an overarching enterprise in the friends of the permanent form of people of African descent to counter transnational threats and malign actors trained to the rule of law security forces, strengthen security forces, provide next level command control, communications, computing, cyber, intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance support, and respond to crisis in order to advance agreed upon interests of people of Africa.
Herschel, we lost your voice again. Do you have a link to that document, or would you like to share your screen? Well, Guy Jokin, I see that you're still here, as is Sharif Alday. Would either of you be able to follow up with this introduction of your organizations, Guy, and then perhaps Sharif?
I will let Excellency Guy take it up from there.
Guy Jokin, are you able to unmute and introduce yourself, please? Wait, Herschel is coming back in just a moment. Just a moment. Herschel is coming back in.
Okay. He's coming back. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. With Herschel, the chair can finish.
Herschel, can you hear us? We're still joining.
It's actually amazing that he's able to be with us after the surgery.
Nothing
Yeah.
about Herschel amazes me.
It's a miracle, indeed.
Okay, so while waiting for the chair or chairman Herschel to come back, I just want to see. Okay. Yeah.
Can you hear me
Go
now?
ahead.
Yes.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
The idea is that there is available that would commemorate that history of people of African descent in Americans' military history for groups, whether they be Buffalo Soldiers, whether they be supporters of Brigadier General Young, whether they be National Association of Black Veterans, GBI, Emerald Veterans, and others, to bring together all of these groups in an overarching group with veterans organizations on the continent, around the world, to promote a unified vision and supportive the
Herschel, your sound is so distorted that I'm going to ask if it's possible, because again, General Bray, this is his time. If Guy Jochen would take the floor and introduce himself, and then His Excellency Baldet, then we'll come back to see if Herschel is available. So Guy Jochen, could you please unmute and introduce yourself?
Okay. Okay. So I just want to, first of all, happy July 4th to everybody. I know this, especially for folks like you guys, you have to spend some time serving this country. I just want to thank all of you. And again, make prayers to our chairman for a speedy recovery as we embark on this important journey. I know it's been a while since we started. And again, I'm very sorry that I've not been able to be on all recent meetings. There's just a lot going on, but I'm back here in the US. We have a summer program. We talk about as we starting in about 2 weeks from now. So I will be in the US from now on at least until the end of this month, which allow us to really take this initiative that the chairman was talking about to the next level. August 25 is around the corner. You know, you have a little bit of a month for this important event. So UNESCO Center for Peace, the chairman already stated clearly, UNESCO, it's, of course, you know, UNESCO is a branch of the United Nations that's in charge of education, science, culture, and communication. We do a lot of activities, you know, just to summarize that, as stated in the preamble of UNESCO, since wars begins in the minds of men, it is in the minds of men that the defense of peace must be constructed. So our job as a civil society within UNESCO is to create activities that will help raise, that help plant the seed of peace in the mind of young people. And that's why we do activities like the summer program, international event, cultural exchanges, and stuff like that. So basically, we celebrate Africa Day, the International Day of Peace. So that's why I think the chairman was very interested in getting not just UNESCO and myself as an integral part of this initiative of friends, of not only friends of the African Union, but also this new forum. Because again, as you know very well, to take an example of the decade for people of African descent. In 2014, the United Nations came out and said, let's have a decade for people of African descent. Okay, it's just a tool that is there. It's a platform, but it's up to people to use that platform to give some meaning to it. And that's why the forum that was created in August last year will soon be here. Okay, it's, you know, it will be an empty shell unless we, the people, decide to get something out of it. And that's why, as a friends of this new forum, we are able and willing to do our part to help make things happen. So I think the biggest event that we are planning for July, August 25th of 2022, less than a month away, it's something that's going to give us an opportunity, not just to have a roadmap, because as we know, sometimes we may have different people, we all believe in something, but in the mind of everybody, sometimes that something may not be pointing in the same direction. So it is very, very important for us to get together and then sync our ideas, say, yes, this is our mission, this is our vision. Where do we go from here? What are the next steps that we'll be taking in order to achieve the end goal? Because one of the problems we have is that we all need this, we all need that, we all need that, but we don't have a Dr. King. We seem not to have a Dr. King today to say, okay, I see the promised line. I may not get there with you, but this is where we are going. When that kind of vision is stated clearly, it is very important. You know, it makes it possible for every single person to kind of contribute for us to get there. And that's why I'm really thankful about our chair, and just stated that UNESCO Center for Peace. Yes, we have a special status with the ECOSOC, which give us some credibility and allow us to do work not just in the United States, but across the globe, and bringing all the people that can help us achieve this goal. So I just want to confirm to all of you that I am humble. I am happy to be here. I'm happy to be part of this initiative. And I think that the forum, the decade for people of African descent, that's going to be, it was 2015 to 2024, at the end of 2024, the civil society is still mixed about the results. You know, it pains me. I even go to places where we have the diaspora, I talk about the decade, people are like, what are you talking about? So, but we still have, it's never too late. We'll still have about 2 years to get something concrete. This forum that was created last year at the United Nations, again, is a platform, but it's up to us to really get that shell, that empty shell, and make something substantial out of that. So there are a number of activities that we'll be doing together between now and the end of the decade to really make sure that, again, yes, it is very, very important that each one of us, because we know the number, the diaspora, the people, the Black people, we all, it doesn't matter where we go around the world, we have the same problem. And that's why the topic that you can read in front of us is very, very important. The three main topics that the decade is supposed to be centered on was recognition, which is recognition of the contribution of African and Afro descendants around the world, the justice, no other race like the Black, like us, has suffered the injustices we've suffered. It's not just in the United States, it's across the globe. So we need to do something about that. And then, of course, there's nothing without development. The development is something that we need to make sure that the next, hopefully, in the next century, the Black people everywhere around the world are not just the people sweeping the floors and cooking food and whatever. We should be able to have many other stories, Obama stories, and many other people's stories that will make us proud. So that's my contribution. I'm going to stop here. If there's any question, I'm willing to have, but again, I'm really a very simple, humble servant, you know, help me here to help contribute my part for us to make sure that in the next decade, you know, we have a roadmap that makes it so that our children, our grandchildren are going to grow, the diaspora across the globe are going to grow up in an area where they are not second-class citizens. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Steve Jokins. General Arnold Gordon Bray, thank you so much for your patience. Again, this is an unexpected opportunity, but General Bray, if we could have your indulgence for at least another 7 minutes, so 7:15 or 10:15, that'll give His Excellency Sharif Balday an opportunity to introduce himself. So Sharif Balday, could you be so kind as to unmute and introduce yourself? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Highness Prince. And I am humbled and grateful to be in this auspicious group that is so meaningful to humanity, because whenever we speak of people of African descent, to me, it covers entire human race, because humanity originated from Africa. So no one should be left out. I also want to buttress one point that Excellency Guy Jokin just mentioned, that war was started in the minds and peace must also be planted in there. And I believe our veterans are the most honorable people that can help us strategize a way of planting that peace in the minds of our people, especially the youths, because they know the extent that war takes and the destruction it does. So they must be also experts in helping us forge a very stable, peaceful world. And I am once again humbled to be amongst their midst. Our chairman, we continue to pray for him, Castle Daniels, for his miraculous, successful surgery. And we are also grateful for the great works he is doing. Lastly, I would give my personal introduction. I am a diplomat assigned by our president of the Republic of the Gambia to bring about meaningful development, not only to Gambia, starting from the African continent, AU, and ECOWAS. And I've been working with many countries in the continent to bring about meaningful development through investment, civil society, and other good, friendly corporations that wants to invest in not only our resources, but in improving the life and livelihood of our people. In this vein, we have secured also properties both in the Gambia and Senegal to build gated communities for our veterans of our brothers in the United States of America, that whenever they want to come and spend some of their time in the continent, they will be at home in those gated communities and do whatever voluntary or whatever service they might want to render to their people where they originated from. And I wish you all a happy July 4th. Thank you.
Well, we certainly do thank and appreciate you, His Excellency Sharif Balday. At this time, we have about 4 minutes left. There are other guests here. So if you have joined us and would like to introduce yourself, now is that time. At 15 after the hour, we'll transition to His Excellency General Bray. But now is that time if you'd like to introduce yourself to our guests, please do so. I am also sharing with you Sharif Balday's LinkedIn. That's the correct spelling of his name. So you can, in fact, reach him through LinkedIn or through Herschel Daniels Jr. So for our guests, if you'd like to either raise your hand or introduce yourself, now is that time.
Brother Thomas, you're still muted.
Sorry. Is there anyone want to go before me? You know, because I'm new, I guess. Don't want to jump in the front of nobody.
You have the floor, sir. The floor is yours. Go right ahead. Please introduce yourself, where you're from, and tell us a little bit about your thoughts today. Thank you.
My name is Isaiah Thomas. Okay, I'm from United States, born and raised in the United States in Alabama. I'm currently retired military. I spent 23 years in the U.S. Army. I have about 3 companies. I have a company operating out of East Africa in Kenya. I have a company, also 2 companies in Central Asia, Uzbekistan, and also that's in Arizona, USA, and also in UK. We're doing everything from housing to logistics to food service, food stuff. I'm also a lead company. I'm the lead company for my group of companies. I've met Herschel back in 2005. I've known him since 2005 during the Katrina era. Okay, and currently I'm in Germany now, just on a visit. I will be back in Istanbul in a couple of days from now, in transit to Africa. I was going to Africa to look at a project, a government project for housing project. We do have a very, very good program for housing, low cost housing that we have. Also, I've had that program since I think 2013. So it's still available for the group. Herschel, I didn't know how he intended to use my services, but I'm available for whatever that he liked for me to see me do. We have a financial support group that can finance pretty large amounts of funds, somewhere in the neighborhood of 700 to 800 million. And we have another group out of New York and also in Egypt that we can fund projects up to we have access to more than $1 billion. I have access to $1 billion by myself. So, but I'm available if I know we don't have much time now, but I'm available to talk at any time, and I could probably go further with what we're doing and what you all would like to see happen in this venture.
Well, thank you so much. In the chat, you'll find my contact information, but ask if you'd be so kind as to put your contact information there as well. Herschel Daniels Jr. and I have been working together since 2012. So this is the 2nd decade of our working together. But I do know that our second guest has joined us now, Mr. Michael Rendler. So before turning it over to General Bray, I'd like to ask if there are other guests, Kadisha Gordon-Sims, I see you're here. If you'd like to introduce yourself, now's that time. And of course, please continue to join us if you would for the second part of this broadcast. But Kadisha, would you like to introduce yourself now or not?
Thank you, Herschel Daniels. It's a pleasure to be here, everybody. Good morning. I am Kadisha Gordon-Sims. I work along with Guy Joken with UNESCO Center of Peace. I am currently the Director of Special Projects with the UNESCO Center of Peace. I am originally from Jamaica. I am here teaching in South Carolina. It's a pleasure to be here in this forum. As a U.S. history teacher, I find it my duty to expose my students, to understand their culture, the African diaspora issues that happened, and for them to understand that it's no different what we're experiencing today, and to make that connection. So I am appreciative of being a part of this platform. I am going to be definitely sticking around to hear the second half of this presentation. Thank you.
Well, we certainly thank you, welcome you, and ask also if you'd be so kind as to provide your information in the chat, as well as E before you leave. But now we do have our special guest, Mr. Michael Rendler. This is a monthly show. It's called First Mondays with the General and the Architect. As I told you earlier, General Arnold Gordon Bray is a general, and Mr. Michael Rendler is the architect. Michael, just to let you know, I did a heavy search for you on the LinkedIn. I was using that as my way to introduce our guest, but I couldn't find much information about you, Michael. So I'll turn it over to General Bray to introduce himself, and then Michael, you'll have to take the opportunity to introduce yourself. General Bray, the floor is yours.
Well, first of all, thank you very much. This was absolutely a perfect lead-in for the kind of things that actually are brought Mr. Rendler and I together. And I would ask, if possible, if if everybody can take their faces off mute, because I like to feel like I'm talking to an audience, and that way I can also look at faces and be able to read as possible, to determine other places I might go. First of all, Guy, your comments I thought were spot on. We are in a period of time. The United States has, over these past 240 plus years, risen to a level of ascendancy because we celebrate what has become a new nation, and it's really important to determine and understand with clarity, great clarity, those words in that document, because we still have nations around the world that use princes and kings and all of those kinds of things. But the moment they said that all men are created equal, they immediately separated those from saying, you're born better. You are born better just because of your last name or bloodline. It is the core of what broke the back of the British linkages to the United States. Cornwallis specifically couldn't understand it. He was fighting the United States with all of his might, and in his writing specifically even stated, how can these people, referring to the colonists and those of us in the United States, fight against God? Because a royal lineage opines that God has so decreed you will be in charge of men. We know that God has done that at times to certain men, but he doesn't just automatically pass it down. And so it is no kidding, from that creation, you are created equal. You have to we have to almost embrace that understanding, because if you don't get that, it then enables somebody to say that you're born different or better and buy into it. And as we celebrate the 4th of July, we're talking about, no kidding, separating that kind of mentality. Because before this time, even the creation of the United States, it was Christian wars, not the fight against everybody. It was Christian wars. It was those religions that had the banner of Christianity because of their interpretation. And I'm going to say this in my own declaration. It was their interpretation of what their God had said that made them actually go against the principles that most religions accept. An idea of peace, a principled idea of peace. And the two basic principles that are inherently correct in every faith. One is that you are subservient to a supreme being. One. The second thing it says is that, because most of us can't really understand what love is, it says to love someone as you love yourself. And that means, no kidding, not what you feel like, not what you pretend to hide behind, but no kidding, how would you want to be treated? This is important. And then now goes to something Sharif says. War begins, or might have been Junkin. War begins in the minds of men. It's not the war, it's the disagreement. And the disagreement without understanding. I'm a warrior. I'm an infantry airborne ranger. My life was to break things and kill people, in simple terms. But the reality is that it was to be an instrument of executing political will. That's what I was. So now let's take that to this point. When did the United States zeal for freedom change them from being terrorists to the British Empire? Okay, you gotta bite this apple now, because this is important. First of all, it was the design that begins with the platform that says all men are created equal. And then there was discourse about what we had defined as being true. The war evolved from the idea that could not be resolved, that we were not subservient to you. In the elementary discussion, it is old Texas. It wasn't Texas. It wasn't Texas. It was a break from the hegemony of Western nations, whereby if you were French, you were Catholic, and you spoke this language. If you were British, you were the derivative of Catholicism, and you were Anglican, and you spoke this language. If you were German, you were of the Calvinist or Lutheran breakoff, and you spoke and did these kinds of things. So then we then, and oh, by the way, and you follow the rules of this king, this other group of barons who had evolved from war and had so deemed themselves that God had said, you're in charge. All of these things set in place a position that says we cannot agree. So the product of what's in our minds, is that we have to resolve this by conflict or war. And that is where our declaration is so visionary, so powerful. And then as Jochen talked about, having the kind of vision that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. presented. One that says, I'm looking beyond me. I'm looking to the future. Something that will endure beyond today. And that is what the United States, that's what our Declaration of Independence begins. That is also the place where we have to then figure out how to establish a world that isn't hegemonous, that isn't in fact always concurring in where we are, but we're respectful of each other's right to exist and to exist within what the people of those boundaries and borders believe is right for them, respectful of humanity. By the way, most folks don't realize that we're the only nation that actually, under Jimmy Carter, has put in our national security interest human rights. We all learned this during the World War II, that's important. But we put it in there. We called it a vital interest. You know what a vital interest is, right? Vital interest means I will go to war for this idea. And that's significant. By the way, I like the other notion that someone has suggested, Mandela Day. That should be a world day. Why? Why Mandela Day, World Day? Why not an MLK Day for the World Day? There are three great leaders that, in my mind, that are particularly of color, that I collectively admire for who they are. There are many, obviously. My first and foremost is my God, and Yeshua or Jesus, whatever you want to call him. And there's a reason why. Not just because of my faith, but because he always gave, and something was put on my heart, choice is evidence of love and peace. Because it always gives you, you always get a chance. What happens to you, whatever happens to you, is difficult sometimes for you to control, but how you respond, you have 100% control of. So the three people that I admire, they come from different backgrounds, and then the result of what they were at the very end was to drag forth and try to create a better place for all people. The first is one that people don't think of very often, is Malcolm X.
Yes.
He started off with an idea, with a position of hatred for, because he was being trained like an animal, being trained to go in a certain direction. But as he learned and his world expanded, he started to recognize that color did not define a person's position. And he found camaraderie in his Islamic faith when he saw the world at Mecca. And he came back at that point in time, realizing that now he had to make a decision to go against someone with whom he loved, but he also took that moment, took that platform to also tell people I was wrong. And while I still believe that I'm prepared to take up arms to move forward, it no longer had a particular color associated with the problem. But he always had that threat of total commitment. That's similar to what we as a nation talk to. The second part, the second person, and I'll save the Mandela Day for last because y'all know I'm going to get there. But the second person is one that we all admire. It's Martin Luther King Jr.
Hello.
I'm going to go quickly here in just a few seconds, but Martin Luther King Jr. Can y'all still hear me?
Maybe.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, we do hear you. Thank you so much.
Okay, Martin Luther King Jr., because what he did was he put hope out there. And he put hope in the face of ambiguity and a blind fog. I can't see what's going to happen next. But faith is the substance of things unseen. And he walked blindly through that fog and led us through that fog, and then started to bring clarity and purpose and brought it to the leader of the free world, and LBJ, and got that, and with great clarity explained how the relationships are. But he had hope, and it wasn't just for his people, because you can't just do it for your people. It was for everyone, but he recognized those that he was leading. He recognized his sheep. His chief of staff defined him as one thing that I will never forget. When I heard Wyatt T. Walker talk, he said people sometimes forget that all Martin Luther King Jr. was a minister leading his sheep. His sheep had just grown. The last person, the reason why I say Mandela Day is important, because it goes to the core of what you have to do, what we have to do to ever move forward. You cannot use the past as the target for the future. The past has to be a platform of understanding from which you move forward. See, right now we have folks, even in our country, that I think I call it gangland politics. When I got the control of the turf, my goal right now is to go ahead and attack you. And I got to get revenge while I got my chance, while I've got the juice. Mandela was bigger than that. He was bigger than that. All the things that he did, every word he used, every reference to the past was to try to move forward to the future. Even to the point of taking those who would have jailed him, who imprisoned him, who kept guard on him, to then flip it and make them take guard of him. Can you imagine Socratic thought behind what he did to do that? That's world leadership. That's world leadership. He had been part of what people might have called a terrorist organizations, because he was in the process, like all of them, evolving as we go forward, like our nation is evolving. Our goal has to be to move forward. I put inside of the chat box this idea of our diaspora. I grew up as a South Carolinian. By the way, up to 10 years old, I was perceived as less than a human being. How do I know that? Because I couldn't go and drink from the same water fountains as everybody else. I don't know how I thought about it. It was my past. I couldn't go to certain places. I was actually trained like a puppy to walk on the other side of the street for a while if I saw certain people. But somewhere between my mother and father-in-law, we got past that. We moved to another step. And similarly, we as a nation have to try to figure out, how do we move forward without always using the past as an anchor, as opposed to a platform from which we dive and go forward and go deeper? Because that's what this day really represents. In 1865, in 1864, there was a speech given by, oh man, I'm spazzing. The 5th of July speech. Frederick Douglass gave his 5th of July speech that he would later on expand to something else for the platform. But at the time, slavery still existed. Slavery was still alive and well. But he still recognized the greatness of what the nation was opining. The thing that he and MLK both did was they used the promissory note, as Thomas mentioned earlier. They used the promissory note that was codified as the foundation of who we are as a nation to move forward. And so what we have to do on this day is figure out how not to be divisive, how to move forward, how to take the tools that enable us to go forward. And by the way, the diaspora, whatever that really looks like, I'm not sure how it looks. I mean, I can't quite get the skin complexion right. I can't figure out if it's the 1-drop rule where you look like Steph Curry, but you know he's black. And you know, for real, he has both parents or half the other folks in the world. But it is just like Sharif says, where that is. Because everybody, if we believe Lucy is the foundation of all human beings, everybody's part of that diaspora. But in a very material and pragmatic sense, until we get the people who are both on the continent, have people who have derived from the continent actively and recognized, and we don't let the shade of a person's skin determine how we treat them, we're going to be broken as a people. We're never going to get it exactly right, but we got to work toward it. Now I go to Michael Rendler, and here's why.
Yeah.
Michael Rendler is as I learned, he's Dr. Rendler's boy. Dr. Rendler was Michael's father, who refused to accept white flight from Black neighborhoods and gentrification. So much so that everyone knew who he was and what he's about. He's an intellectual person that has degrees, and he's an engineer hardcore, and he fights the same fight that I have now been fighting since I left military service, to ensure that all the people inside of all the communities within this nation and beyond can be given the opportunities to advance themselves through mental, physical health, through character leader development, through financial literacy and wealth building. And most importantly, an educational framework and system that will allow them to prepare not for what they see today, but for what they don't even know will exist, but is prepared for tomorrow. And that comes from Socratic thought and utilizing the scientific methodology of thinking, because it is application universally. With that said, I will go ahead now, turn over to Michael Rendler, and you go will forgive me, but I have a hard stop at 11:05. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. But Michael,
Thank
before
you.
you begin, let me briefly share my screen again, because you raised the question about what is the definition of the diaspora. There is an official definition, and I have to tell you, General Bray, that unfortunately you, like many others, are ugly Americans. When we look at only the world from the viewpoint of ourselves as American citizens, and there's a global perspective. And in terms of this group that E. Jokins and Sharif Alday and Herschel Daniels and myself are engaging about, it's about the global outlook that we're working from. So there is a quote, unquote, official definition. According to the African Union, they define the diaspora as consisting of people of African origin living outside the continent, irrespective of their citizenship and nationality, and who are willing to contribute to the development of the continent and the building of the African Union. Its Constitutive Act declares that it shall invite and encourage the full participation of the African diaspora as an important part of a continent in the building of the African Union. So there is no mention of color or race or skin or anything in that. So we ourselves, as American citizens, particularly those that are born here, have, I think, an inherent pushback around the world against defining who ourselves are. I think we do have to also be willing to open the doors to accept that there is a world that we were born into that's greater than the United States itself. Thank you so much. Michael Rendler, the floor is yours.
Okay, can you guys hear me okay?
5 by 5, yes.
Okay, last time I gave a little talk, Andrew said, well, Michael, that's a whole lot of words, but we're visual learners. So could you make it a little more visual? So I have, if I can share my screen, I have a few images I'd like to use today to kind of tell us, tell everyone, tell Andrew's network where we are in this conversation.
Yes, you might.
Okay, so let me do that. I think you can see that okay? Is that fair?
Yes, we see it.
Yeah, so this is the point of departure that I'd like to start with today. The reason I want to start with this in the conversation is General Bray talked about these 4 pillars of empowerment. This is a project that we've been working on for 5-6 years to actually create a space. I really respect that General Bray calls me an engineer, but I'm an architect, and an architect has a different perspective because he uses what's called a spatial construct. And a spatial construct is a skill set called spatial acuity that our underserved population has a very, very, very high fidelity in. And this is well studied and well proven. And this is the frontier of consciousness. And I say that because all of us scientists right now that are studying consciousness, including Google, Facebook, and looking at language structures, are looking at spatial structures. Neural networks are spatial structures. And I share that with you to say that for us to move to what General Bray is talking about, this next iteration of inclusion, diversity, and equity, we need to then move the conversation to a spatial construct. And so all of these movements, which are called whole of government within the United States, are what are called place-based decision-making. And place-based decision-making cannot happen unless you have a population that understands this spatial acuity narrative. So what we put in place under the current administration, and this is important for you to hear this, the Envision centers were from the previous administration, but in the current administration, we put in place what's called the infrastructure bill. This is the United States. But inside of that infrastructure bill is a clause, a rider called Justice 40, which says 40% of all of the resources of the $1.4 trillion will benefit our underserved at-risk community, focused on detoxification are environmental degradation, because they're the victims by mapping, by science.
My 36th birthday. Good night.
Okay, so what we're going to be able to do is we're going to be able to include this.
My 36th birthday. Good night.
Okay.
Hey, Mike, if I can, if you're not speaking, please mute, because
I've handled it. Please proceed.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. So this premise of spatial technology and place-based development requires the community to participate. And so we have a group of people we've been working with in Los Angeles specifically, called Encounter LA. And Encounter LA is a group of concerned citizens who have been working through Los Angeles Trade Technical College, Community College, to actually look at what does the deployment of something like this look like. And with that, we've been able then to talk about a whole systems approach called VCAP, Virtual Community Action Planning, that would then allow us to develop our communities and access those communities through educational space, building virtual simulations. So using these virtual simulations, and we've been doing this in Kansas City, we then can talk about what is the best fit scenario. And this brings us to our next generation of discussion called artificial intelligence. And I really want you to hear this, because this is something emerging, and it's called sentient beings. And so where we are in the conversation, General Bray gave a very good description of where we were 200 years ago with the idea that all people are created equal. So that was to create a level playing field. Well, now we have a big discussion about what are sentient beings, what are spiritual beings, and what does that even mean? And so the thing I want to make a point of is a sentient being can be nature itself. It can be this association with our natural environment. And if we don't come to grips with that phenomena, then we are not respectful of the creator of 1 billion years of evolution. And I say this in a very sincere way. We are making tools right now to make that investigation. And while we make the tools, we need to include the population in the sophistication of the tool. And this means that we need to understand what this thing is that General Bray and I have gone around and around about several times, called AI, if it's a thing itself or if it's just another algorithm. But when Google puts out a product like Lambda, which is a natural language recognition software, and the scientists in studying it start to discuss, is that a sentient being? Does it have a spiritual state? Can it understand my emotional state? And that exchange of emotions is now happening on the internet in a very big and sophisticated way. And what the closer in this is, that in the cyberspace, in the virtual space that you're looking at here, are these populations legitimately in the discussion about what the value proposition is in cyberspace? And this is being discussed, and this is the next iteration. So I say this in all sincerity, that as we infuse these $1.4 trillion into America, and we build out our diaspora, and we build out our continent of Africa, will we have the people actually being the ones to assess, design, engineer, construct and operate their communities in what's called a sustainable way. So what I did here is I said, okay, I want to talk about this a little bit today. I want to talk a little bit about, this is a specific project that we're working on in Watts, where they've added 300 units of housing into a very small area, but they skirted what's called the Environmental Quality Act requirements. And that's because they call it a sustainable community project. And to make something a sustainable community project or a transportation-oriented community project, we got to go down inside of the weeds. So this is the mapping system for the train station on the metro system in Watts, California, about a mile, less than a mile from the Watts Tower, the epicenter. And they want to make this, they want to activate this as a cultural center. And these are the housing developments. So we're in the process right now of using the community to directly simulate what does that activity look like over a 24-hour cycle? How do we activate the space to create this sensibility? And concurrently with that, I have a paper here that's a project that we're working on in Africa, that, excuse me, in Las Vegas, that's exactly the same problem. And so what I'm trying to do right now in a very short period of time, 15 minutes, is show you that these concepts of diversity, equity, inclusion in a spatial narrative, in a localized decision-making process of how people interact, how the environment interacts with people, is happening as we speak. And so this is a map showing us that all of this information now is available online. So this is the ZEMIS map. This starts to tell you the public documents, but if you access these public documents, do you know what they say? Now I'm down in the weeds. Now you're looking at me like, Michael, why are you in the weeds? Because these documents, these legal documents, this is the determination document, is saying this is what we're doing, and we all have access to that information. Do we care? Maybe some of us do, maybe some of us don't. But if I'm at this age right here, I don't know yet what to care about. So they need the exposure. They need the information. They need the knowledge. And that's when you create equity, because then you can have participation. Otherwise, you're just placating the problem. So these two are images that were on the news, where this woman, girl, 15 years old, showed how to build a healthcare center in her community. And now she's 15 years old and she's already looking at the most sophisticated forms of ergonomics, how a dentist's office works or how a clinic works. So what happens is, by using these simulation tools and bringing these simulation tools into these schools, into these environments, you can now reconnect across all 15 career technical education pathways. So I'm going to close with a meeting I had on Thursday with a group working through the United Nations on something called the Great Green Wall of Africa. And they want to use this methodology of inclusion, diversity, and equity to show spatial construct of how villages and integration have a full data layer relationship. And we've done this now in several communities. And then you start to understand where to put what. And this is the core of spatial thinking. What goes where and what are the implications of it? And now we can do this at a very high carbon footprint level, carbon analysis level. And this is at the core of what carbon credits are going to be and why they're proposing a Great Green Wall in China. And what is the technology that Bezos will accept to infuse his $1 billion into the continent of Africa? Because
Now we're still looking at
without a control system associated to that, it's going to be very difficult to know that we're improving our inclusion, improving our diversity, and improving our equity.
Your screen share is still on the Vision Center, is that correct?
Yeah, because I wanted to show you that these maps here are quality maps, area maps, and we're talking to them about what is the state of geospatial technology on the continent of Africa. And I've been in several conversations with this. We know what the military state is. We know what the military is doing with single source of truth. We've been working with Department of Homeland Security for 5, 7, 10 years now. So we understand how these technologies work. But what do the people understand? How are the people participatory? How does this become part of the STEM education network? And so we believe that this platform approach of inclusion can be deployed across all 100 Envision centers. And with that deployment, we can then bring the whole of government, the whole of community back to the table. So these documents that I wanted to show you today are the documents that the agencies utilize to actually augment and start to change our physical environment. And unless we have community participation, then we just have backroom deal cutting. And that backroom deal cutting has long-term effects. And so I'm going to say this, I haven't found it written down, but that originally was supposed to be life, liberty, and the pursuit of properties. And since Thomas Jefferson had all the property, he decided it was going to become life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And the pursuit of happiness is fleeting. And anybody who's ever studied happiness knows that that's not a definitive thing. Okay, but property is measurable. Okay, and boundaries are measurable, but nature isn't. Nature has interdependencies and interconnectedness, and it's in those interdependencies and interconnectedness that we can build what General Bray called the next iteration. And I think that's what we're involved with right now as we speak.
Well, this has been so important, and I do appreciate your bringing us visuals. Now, we're not limited by time if you have other material you'd like to share, or we can open up the floor and have comments and then move forward from there. Ball's in your court.
I just want to say, I know General Bray said he has a hard stop. And so, you know, since this is quote, this platform we've been working through, I just wanted to share the work that E7 Architecture Studio and our group has been working on for the last 3 months. And there's a lot of advancement. And as we get the message out, thank you, Andrew, for being the network, Andrew's network. It's going to become very clear that these are the methodologies that have to be embraced. And I can share, there's lots of things going on with how do we get after, or how do we get underneath diversity, equity, and inclusion? And then what is the metric? How do we measure it? How do we assess it? And how do we know we're doing better? And that's why I think this spatial narrative is a bit, otherwise we're just going to get displacement, and that's not going to work. And as General Bray said, I was a victim of displacement, and it's not the way to do a problem.
General Bray, back to you. Then we'll open it up for our guests. General Bray, are you available?
Let's do this. I will take, for me, I'll stay for one question, and I'll do some closeout before I break contact. But if I have any questions, I like to go and address a question. I don't know if what I said earlier to set up the conditions that we have as a nation, the things we're doing, is sufficient. So I'll hold for a question or two. Herschel.
Oh, let me unmute you, Herschel. Yeah, Herschel Daniels, I've asked you to unmute. Can you unmute yourself, Herschel?
That's
I'm
okay.
unmuted.
Yeah, I thought I saw you try to pop. So I was going, if you had a question for me.
Yeah. Have you read the OMB report on equity and Executive Order 13985?
I have not. What is it?
So what Mr. Rendler is talking about was delivered for HUD on the new Envision Center model, April 22nd. That is Executive Order 13985. HUD defined it for all cabinet agencies and major federal government departments last year, and it was delivered April 22nd across the US government. I recommend that you read it if you want to talk about equity, because you go to hud.gov/equity and it's in the chat. And then let's have a discussion. I had a discussion with, we have over 1,000 of our members of our national coalition just came together, including the California Reinvestment Coalition in Washington about this. And so take a look at it. Be glad to integrate what Rendler is saying is being integrated via Ken Wyrick.
If I may, Herschel, just to let you know, while I've not read the document, and Mike's almost snickering a little bit, we actually have been feeding HUD from the beginning, and the Envision Center, that even though it emerged under the last administration, we are still, I mean, literally in direct contact with various levels of HUD. And the first 17 of the Envision Centers, we were integral in determining what they are now. They're now over, I think it's right at 1,000 that they've got at this time. No, over 100 vision centers with up to 1,000 right now emerging. So I'll look at the details of what's been crafted in there, but I'm very
Secretary
yeah,
Secretary Fudge.
yes. I'm very comfortable that I'm having at least a working relationship of the details, hence what Mike talked about with Justice 40 and how to move forward in those things. So I will if you give me probably a week or so to go through, because I got a few presentations, I will be able to go through line by line and if when necessary, kind of show you where we're tied into this, some of the ideas, and in fact, probably more than likely, drivers of those ideas as a back feeder, if you will, because this is HUD in a strategic document has a responsibility as the agency to be able to address America's poor needs, because it's underserved communities. It defines what those are. And so to that end, this is where we got to this holistic view, and it was 4 pillars that we talked to and that the last administration bought into, and this administration is advancing. But the reality is there were several, and they just basically got subsumed. There were several other lines of effort, but they got subsumed inside of 4. And we got comfortable with that, because if we can get those 4 right, we'll get it right. And to Mike's point earlier, we think the core is going to come through the STEM innovation. And Thomas, as a veteran for yourself, there's a Veterans Affinity group out of HUD that works inside of HUD that you may want to consider making contact with to take your talents and bring them inside for discussion. That is led by Mr. Gerald Bennett, who is inside of HUD with the Veterans Affinity group, because there are talents that we've all taken from our service and our commitment remains. So anyhow, all of you, thank you so much for your time and this opportunity to share thoughts with you all at least once a month. And every now and then Andrew tries to snatch me out for more than that, but at least once a month. And if we said something that that disturbed you, or you felt like it was incorrect, please send it to me, and I will be more than happy to respond at any time. Thank you.
Well, before you leave, please put your contact information in the chat, at least your email, so that Thomas and others can reach you. But we're going to continue this conversation even after your exit. If there's any commentaries by any of our other guests. And also, I want to address just briefly the fact that HUD is the United States interface with UN Habitat. And so it's my objective to find ways we can connect together the work that we're doing here, particularly with veterans, to expand throughout the world, because veterans are throughout the world, but it's up to us to employ those. And Sharif El-Day, as you know, the African diaspora is not just around the world, but particularly here in the United States. So there is a diaspora legacy project by the African Union that engages all of the diasporas from Africa in the rest of the world. I'm suggesting we connect those dots. Beginning here in Los Angeles, Sharif El-Day, that's why I'm here, because this is the place where everything connects.
Yeah. Thank you.
So thank you, General Bray. Michael Rendler, please join us, continue if you so choose. Herschel Daniels, go back to you if you'd like to take the floor. Otherwise, we do have other
No,
things.
I've got to go. I got to go back to doctor again. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, and thank you everyone for your. I'm going to continue this conversation. You're free to join if you so choose, or leave if you have to. But we do have other things to cover on this July 4th of 2022. As General Bray mentioned, it's the Department of Housing and Urban Development that is the United States gateway into all these resources. But my point is that, as I said earlier, it is a connection with UN Habitat. Now, everyone is very much engaged with what they call the Sustainable Development Goals. And as we go forward, it's becoming more and more clear that few Americans are as aware of it as the rest of the world, particularly those in Africa, whose lives depend upon actions that are taken to address these issues. But I speak to that because the United States does have a measuring stick as to how the United States is doing in achieving those goals. And on Juneteenth of 2021, there was a report that none of the 50 states in the United States are even halfway to achieving the Sustainable Development Goals here within the United States. So it's difficult, if not impossible, for us to become world leaders in this area when we ourselves are not demonstrating that. Sharif El-Day, it may not surprise you that the ones left furthest behind are those of indigenous populations, those of African descent, and those of Latinx populations. So what I'm proposing is that we engage ourselves with this global framework that includes HUD to allow us to find ways we can have conversations that engage our people. Thomas, I know that some of this might be very boring to you, but what I have here to tell you is that Michael pointed out that the new paradigm means that we are using money to actually pay people in our community to do things that are beneficial to the community. You have a footprint not just in the United States, but throughout Africa. So Sharif El-Day, I hope you find ways that you can articulate ways that perhaps we can engage the resources that we have now to accomplish objectives that you yourself see. So El-Day, please take this opportunity to share with us your thoughts.
Hey, Andrew, before we jump in there, I just want to say one quick thing about the difference between a goal and a benefit. And so that list that Herschel, defined there, that list is, this idea of all the agencies actually, their whole department has to reorganize to be in compliance with Justice 40. Well, our county supervisor did this 2 years ago. And so we wrote our paper, our citizen science paper, around we don't have the population to understand my presentation. And so we need to pay them to work, pay them to learn. Corporations have been doing this forever. So you're just touching on that, but it's across the entire federal government. That's why I had that list up there. This is what Herschel's talking about. These are executive orders. So this is something that we started 4 years ago with Gerald Bennett called the Center of Excellence, to put the accounting system, the back end system in place so that we can have those metrics. So they're not goals, they're actual measurable outcomes. And to be able to quantify this, and as you say, using money as through the DAO and through this distributed ledger concept. And these are things, technologies that are associated with the Lambda. That's why I spoke to Lambda. So I just want to kind of frame that in there because it's really an advanced technology conversation. And so we have to figure out how we take a first world society, if you will, on the continent and bring this next generation thinking to that civilization internally. It can't be another imperialist move. And that's the part I think we're trying to get underneath right now. So
Well, I agree with that.
sorry to jump in.
Oh, no, that's perfect, because again, as you mentioned earlier, this Andrew network is intending to go to war with what we have. So the ones that we have on the line right now in the room, these are who we're talking to. So Thomas, I want to thank you for joining us, but also I want to ask you, do you see value in what you found here today and bringing together solutions to your logistical challenge? Because what you've explained to us is that you have a footprint in the United States, in Eastern Europe, and Africa as well. Do you understand how valuable it is for us to connect our resources together or not? I'd just like your thoughts on that, Mr. Thomas.
It's for me.
You.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I've always been excited about, supporting the Herschel and whatever his undertaking that he wanted to do. I have a vast amount of support throughout Africa, most of Africa, East Africa, West Africa, Central Africa, also and Central Asia. I've been set up in Central Asia for more than 2 years. So I got a lot of influence in the country. Also, I'm operating in Ghana. I can operate pretty much anywhere because I'm the lead company. Okay, and I have very good support construction company throughout the Middle East and Europe. And I got an excellent housing projects that we can deliver in terms of low cost. Okay, I mean, if you want to build a number of houses, we can build your houses $10,000 a piece. That's including profit, you see. And we have the technology to do it. We have the team to do it, and we can train the local peoples in various countries around the world. I spent almost 40 years outside of the United States, even though I'm born in America. I spent 23 years in the military, but I spent most of my life overseas, and I live all across Europe and Middle East and also Asia. So I'm trying to feel my way in right now to see exactly what maybe I'd be best for me to fit in, because me and Herschel had a conversation last week before he got an operation. So he had brought some things up to my attention. And I thought maybe that we was going to have a discussion about it today, but maybe he probably talked to me another time about what he want to do. But I'm a concept operator. I can work on concepts. I can fit in pretty much anywhere. I can make the decisions on the ground anywhere in the world, pretty much. All of my team supports me. We have access to a lot of funds. Okay, it's unbelievable. You wouldn't believe it if I told you. But I don't have the programs. When I reached out to Herschel, I asked Herschel, what can I help him out with, and what kind of projects that he has available that I can, maybe support him with. And then he had started to get sick, and then he dropped off the radar. For a while, and then I got back online with him. I think he must have dropped off the radar for more than 2 or 3 months. So finally, when he came back online, and I was very excited to see him. I had set up some of my other colleagues and everything, right, to take on some projects, but he never came back to me. So therefore now I can do pretty much. I'm not limited to anything to do, but I noticed that you talk a lot about HUD projects, and that's in the United States. So we can reach out. No, it doesn't matter. We can reach out in the United States too, anywhere globally. So, but I think that's maybe should be another conversation that we could have, because I'm spending here. I work 7 days a week.
As do I, as
and,
the geek, as the
Yeah.
retail base. So
Yeah.
how soon do you want to do a follow-up? Because E. Jokins, I know, and also Sharif Al-Day, we're all connected through Herschel. My task is to get things done. My task is to get things done. So that's why you're here now.
Yeah, I'm an action person also, and you know, I'm on the ground. I can be on the ground pretty much anywhere in the world. Okay, and even though, you know, I'm on my second career, so I have all these companies that I'm working with, and so I got very, very strong support around the world strategically. So anything that you want to discuss and talk about and everything, I'm available. We can talk again even later on in the evening or tomorrow. I'm available almost 24/7.
Excellent.
I think I'm on the group chat also, and I'll just identify myself and put my contact details on the group chat that Herschel had created. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll definitely do that. And I'm very interested in supporting you. So whatever you need support with, I can do it. Some of my heavy financier, very, very heavy financier, is looking for something to do. And so they talk to me about projects, but they're deep pockets. And you know, these groups got somewhere, I know for a fact they got over 2 million euros, 2 billion euros. No, sorry. I'm sorry. They have over 2 trillion euros available, money available. And I don't have enough work. I don't have any work for them in terms of anything tangible, okay, that we can look at. So if there's something tangible, there's something we can work on, because we had a problem when we went to, we was going into Nigeria to do a project, government project, and we couldn't get any clarification on the project name, the project, how was it going to be funded, this and that. And so I had got an egg in my face pretty much, because they thought that this project was ready to go. We were ready to mobilize. By the time we got all our people to mobilize, all of a sudden we had to shut it down. So that's what I don't want to revisit that again, you know, and maybe that was some person that we should have asked, but that we didn't ask. So that may be fall on myself, but we still have access, very strong access. And if whenever you're ready to talk to me, I'll find the time, I'll create the time to talk to you any day of the week.
Well, today, in the first place, and the second thing is that in the chat, I put in the link to Arnold Williams. I'm here in Los Angeles. Arnold Williams is in Alexandria, Virginia. But the CEO of that, her name is Joyce Williams. She's the advisor to the African Continental Free Trade Area Policy Net Secretariat in Ghana. So the things that you're talking about, I'm suggesting that we first take a look at this from a legal view, and then also from a strategic view. Now I know that Steve Jokin is here. He represents not just his own UNESCO Center for Peace. I know he also has projects at hand. But again, Sharif Al-Day, if you take time to introduce yourself as the diplomatic representative for not just the Gambia, but ECOWAS, and the fact that you have shovel-ready projects at hand, I'm suggesting, Thomas, that we put the paperwork in place, because documents move money. And the way to do that is to make sure we dot our I's and cross our T's today. But Sharif Al-Day, the floor is yours.
Oh, thank you very much, Prince Andre. I first want to commend our brother and let him know that Chairman Daniel specifically assigned me to look up for viable projects. And for our sub-region here, we really want to replace our old dilapidated structures throughout the country. And the low-cost price I had from Mr. Thomas is the way we were looking at pricing, because some quarters some developers from the United States, what they call low cost was around $18,000 to $25,000, which is almost for top rated spenders in our continent, in this part of the world. So $10,000 low cost is very good. And making sure that community participation is crucial in any technology that they would do to deliver such housing. As Chairman Daniels directed me to look for projects that would bring in affordable housing to this sub-region, I've identified major projects in Senegal and the Gambia, totaling up to 20,000 homes for a start. I'll also be working with our National Social Security and Housing Finance Corporation that have banked land in all the regions of our country. So it will be a good start when Chairman Daniels fully recovers. We can revisit this and discuss with Mr. Thomas. We really need appropriate technologies. And coming to technology, I just want to correct Mr. Michael. I don't believe revolutionary technology, cutting-edge technology of the future is monopolized by any nation. We might not have the infrastructure, but our young ones has conceived, because of our challenging lives and the environments we live in, they have conceived wonderful applications, systems that could not be exposed to any person who is not exposed to such adverse conditions. So like Silicon Valley gave way to Hyderabad in India, and India is doing very well now. And like Israel, Tel Aviv is leading in cutting edge technology, software, and whatever, machine intelligence, agricultural development. So all we need from you is the infrastructure. Bring us a cable, submarine cable that has at least nothing less than 1,000 terabytes speed. And you will see what the youth of Africa will teach the world, because we have enjoyed a lot, and through that challenge, there is a lot of dreams and plans in the brains sitting there, waiting for the actual opportunities to lay hands on infrastructure and do what is necessary. So we are together in this. This is a global world now, and nobody can claim monopoly of intelligence. It is global. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, sir. And I do appreciate the fact that also, as you may or may not know, the rest of the audience, the Gambia, even though it's a very small nation, has a very powerful footprint. But again, it's from the diplomatic perspective that Chairman Daniels has appointed Sharif al-Day to function in the capacity of the coordinator for not just West Africa or ECOWAS, but the entire continent. And it is through, Mr. Thomas, it is through my intervention that Sharif al-Day is here. I am the zero-time solutions facilitator for global business incubation that General Bray, our guest here, is also a part of. And Michael Rendler is very much involved here in Los Angeles with TV Jobs, headed up by Brad Carson, also part of our global team. But my function is to get things done. So again, I'm here to tell you point blank that Herschel Daniels brought us together to get things done. I've been involved, as you might or might not know, with the private placement platform idea for at least 10 years. At that time, there were trillions of dollars looking for projects. However, your case is not unfamiliar to me. It's critical that their projects be not just shovel ready, not just accountable, but must have a humanitarian outcome and benefit. But it's only, in my personal opinion, that using the technology that Michael Rendler has devised here in Los Angeles that provides you with the opportunity to create a geospatial replication of what the intended outcome is before you begin, in order to capture all the various elements. But Michael, could you briefly tell us a little bit about the E7 Architectural Studio and the accomplishments that you were able to achieve here with community college students that designed and built or designed $10 billion worth of construction? Michael, I'm not sure if you have time to make that introduction now or not, but if so, please do.
Yeah, well, we can talk about that idea and the premise of being able to build a collective simulation model and what the workforce development looks like underneath it. We did build the largest sustainable simulation model in the world. It took us about 10 years to build it, and we built it all with inner city at-risk community college students, and it received an international award for innovation in government. So, but the premise of the model is really this object-oriented programming, and object-oriented programming sits inside what I was talking about earlier. So, in full respect to Sheriff, I couldn't agree with him more that the intelligence of the community is untapped, and that the connectivity seems to be a big factor in us being able to build that network. We built that network with community college students across the district to implement a $9 billion bond program and to show net zero performance across, I think it was 67 high performance buildings. Those high performance buildings are now part of the whole state of California new requirements for getting building permit. You need to be able to show these they're called predictive performance models. And to Andrew's point, I have documentation for 2,000 unit developments in Gambia put together by Bechtel Corporation. But the problem is that the environmental science that supports the architecture is not consistent. And and you can see right now all the flooding going on in China because the civil engineering work is not conducive to the land use planning. And so these models, these simulation models can do predictive performance. And that premise is why we should be careful with just thinking about housing, and we should be talking about building community. And so these concepts, the education, we did the incubator with the community college district. We've done what I'm going to call generation 2 with those maps and watts with the state of California Strategic Growth Council for their TCC grant, Transformative Climate Community. And the Transformative Climate Community is the first iteration of the Justice 40 idea. So that's why the community is being baselined with a sustainability metrics. And so we've been at it now 25 years, building these simulations and testing the simulations. And now those have become policies. So now we know that, first there's innovation, then there's policy, and then there's requirements. And so without the workforce, that's where the thing's going to get derailed. And so these, and again, back to Sharif, I couldn't agree with him more. There's no reason you can't run your own data centers. There's no reason you can't create your own Silicon Valley. There's no reason why you wouldn't do it better, because the carbon footprint's very destructive. And I think the innovation is going to happen in that space. And so that's what we were trying to do with the Justice 40.
Well, thank you very much. And to your point, Thomas, I heard you say that you have a footprint throughout East Asia, as well as around the world. But I do want to bring to your attention that one of our team includes Mr. Shankar Damodaran. I've asked him to join us now on Zoom. He's in India. He may be able to join us or not. But he and I are working very closely with Post University Bank here in Los Angeles. The idea is to deploy the AI technology through the existing projects that we have at hand. Mr. Shankar, he actually leads the Global Chamber in Ahmedabad. And what I'm suggesting is that when you ask us to bring you projects, my role is, as I mentioned, a facilitator. My company, my corporate company, RXTC Export Trading Company, we export expertise. So the only role I have is to make sure everyone at the table come away with a smile, and that there's an outcome that has a positive benefit on the world at large. So before I go further, though, Guy Jochen, you've been very quiet. I know you've discussed the UNESCO Center for Peace. Is there anything else you'd like to discuss with us about shovel-ready projects on the African continent or not?
The great thing that we are here with His Excellency. You all know I spent half of my life with him, learning and seeing what's happening there. I do know that the need is there. With the appropriate resources, there's just a lot of things to do. Like it's talking about infrastructure. Okay, we don't have roads, we don't have airline. He has in his hand right now, if there's some money, he could get a couple of airlines going on the next day. I know that. So since he spoke and we are all on the same page, I think we just need, we have the people that are ready, willing and able to make things work. Just like we all know that, yes, the reason we have more things happening in the West, in the US, that is not because people are smarter here, whatever, but it's because the environment. So, but there are people here that are willing and able to create that kind of environment in Africa so that any person willing and able to invest there could invest confidently, and knowing not only that they're going to have the return on their investment, but also that this is going to be something that they'll be proud of investing in. So that's what I'm going to say. And we are ready to do our part to make that happen.
Well, thank you very much. I'm going to put this in the chat. Just a recent article by Shankar Damodaran that you could follow up with. But again, Mr. Thomas, you let me know what time today we can follow up with an initial consultation. My task is to bring all the elements together. What I believe, as I've told Michael Rendler, I've known him now for the last 12 years, that it is the technology that he has demonstrated here in the United States that has implications globally, but it's only when you have shovel-ready projects to go to work. You mentioned workforce development. You mentioned the fact that you could actually provide training that is certified and recognized, not just on that particular project, but worldwide. Another of our guests, or another of our members of our network, 60 Buildtech, they're based in Shanghai, but they bring German technology to the table along with German financing to construct factories that create factories. And so the idea is that we can bring together all these elements. But as Michael says, we're working with it, not just the Internet of Things, but what I like to call the Internet of Everything all the time at the same time. So that's where my expertise comes in, finding solutions to get an outcome that everyone is trying to accomplish. So you have to let me know, Mr. Thomas, when is a good time for us to have this conversation and to begin the paperwork trail, because paperwork moves money.
I know today is the 4th of July for you. I mean, it's 4th of July for me too, but I'm overseas. But I'm willing to talk to you anytime. If you like to talk tomorrow or later on tonight.
I'm working now. I'm working now.
Because what I wanted to speak to you about, because I'm hearing the language that I speak in terms of projects that you have mentioned, IT projects, telecommunication projects, housing projects, all these projects we have underneath our wings in terms of we can mobilize them, like we can turn them on like today, okay? Because it's right down my stick. So therefore, I really love to have a discussion, because this is what we do. I mean, I'm not just a one-man show. I have a company, several companies in the UK, United Kingdom, okay, companies in Kenya, companies in our company. These are my companies in Central Asia, okay, and also got one in the United States too. It's a construction company, okay. But I have some very good directors and partners that supports me. We can presentate, we can present to do anything. So I just had a visitor just visit me in Uzbekistan that was setting up the telecom and telecommunication, okay, and setting it up for the country. So I noticed the gentleman was talking about something for Gambia. Yeah. Well, we can have this conversation even after we finish here. I can come back and have a discussion with you, and then I can go over almost some of everything imaginable. Okay, and I can assign the projects and in it one by one by the numbers, and we can move it forward, because I noticed that we've been discussing a lot of these projects throughout the years, but nothing never materialized and everything. So that's why I've been overseas. I'm basically in Uzbekistan. I'm the only American there I know of. Okay, that's in Uzbekistan. Okay, I'm surrounded by local people, government peoples, and everything, right? And any project that I want, it's at my fingertips. Okay, same thing. Most places that I go to. So therefore, I don't have any dead weight on me. So therefore, I can make things happen for you. Okay. And so if you allow me, we can have this conversation after the call, and let's talk about it. We can start putting in whatever we need. If you need some type of expression of interest, I'll be more than happy to do it for you and do it for the group. And we can start up the projects.
Yes. Okay. Well, sir, Balde had a comment, and yes.
I just wanted to buttress the point that Excellency Guy Jokin mentioned to you. I had a very, very eye-opening trip around the continent with him, with his expertise, because he's a seasoned traveler and knows, in fact, most parts of the countries we went to, which was my region than myself. So he is trying to prepare a very, very conscious, intelligent, female-led science and mathematics learning in a country that was dismantled by the French when it comes to education, that is Guinea-Conakry. With all the resources they are having, the educational standard, especially science and technology, is almost negligible. And with the help of God, Guy Jokin started a project there, a very, very, very good project. Unfortunately, due to limited resources, even to meet our promise to the successful girls that passed through the mathematics and science examination competition of giving them 2,500 tablets to continue on their course was a bit challenging. So these are the things that we are faced with in the continent. And I would want to plead with everybody here, just like you are celebrating your National Day today, and you are all aware that it was America that lifted China out of poverty by bringing in technology, know-how, moving industries into China, getting them skills. So I believe after our cream of our workforce being malhandled and moved from this continent to develop America to where it is, we also deserve, if not a similar gesture, but at least some kind of not reparations, because the injuries caused to us can never be repaired, but let us get the resources, the equipment, the technology, so that we can develop the world. Because you know, Africa developed the world. Egypt, it was Egypt that civilized the world. It was Egypt that taught the Greeks mathematics, algebra, and everything. So Africa is always ready to be a mother and a mentor to the world, and we were always welcoming everyone who wants to bring in meaningful development. And I'm very excited to hear this from Brother Thomas, that the much needed telecom infrastructure we can have. If we have that, we can get a better world. Thank you.
In the chat, I put a link to the meeting. It'll be at 9:15. I have a standing meeting every week at this time at 9 o'clock. And once I get that started, I'll be able then to come to meet with you, Mr. Thomas, if you're available then, in about 30 minutes from now. What's your schedule look like? Mr. Thomas?
Yes, I'm available. I'll be available.
Okay, very well. So anyone here is willing, is invited to that meeting, but this will be a strategy meeting that I'll be running. So you're all welcome as part of the team. Herschel Daniels has appointed me as an equity shareholder in his corporation. So I'll speak on behalf of Herschel, and anything I do will benefit Herschel as well. But the idea is for us to move forward and move now. So I'm ready.
I got a feeling that after we have this conversation, we'll move something today. Okay, because I'm almost certain.
Well, I'm 1,000% certain. Also, in the link for you, Mr. Thomas, there's something that's being formed called the Africa EU Chamber of Commerce. I'm invited to speak at that next month in August. The intent is for there to be a private organization of chambers of commerce that link together Latvia and the former Eastern Europe, Eastern Europeans, Eastern Europe, that's now part of course, the EU. But the idea is that we bring these commercial solutions to this global platform. So we have about 30 to 45 days, if we choose to prepare a launch of this working group that delivers solutions, so we can be consultants to the world in delivering your resources through our network to get the outcomes that we're trying to accomplish.
Okay. Okay, 30 minutes, I'll be available. I'm available myself to you. And
okay, well,
let's,
yeah, please copy the information in the chat for the link to the Zoom meeting. Or if you can inbox me, I'll make sure I send it out to your email. Also for Guy, Michael, Sharif Alday, if you choose to, please join us. But I'm going to wind this up now.
Put my details in the chat, and I would send Mr. Thomas directly a submarine cable project I've been working on for almost a year now with the government of the Gambia to be landed in the Gambia and probably in extension to other countries that doesn't have the pleasure of having a submarine broadband cable accessible to their telecom infrastructure. Thank you.
What I'd ask you to do is put together a list of your top 10. My role here, again, Herschel Daniels appointed me to be the coordinator. So my intent is to provide a very, I think, clear-cut pathway for us. So I'd take responsibility, if you could, put together your top 10 in order of priorities and cost, and then we can work forward from there, if that's convenient for you.
That is, if it will not create a lot of bottlenecks, because if the intermediaries, the chains are too much, we need to at least share directly. Then if the person is interested, then we can work as a group.
Of course, in that case, I would just ask you, CC, and as Herschel's not here, all I'm trying to do is coordinate. My responsibility to make sure I do what I'm asked to do. So, of course, you have direct contact with Mr. Thomas. He's made that available. I'm just asking that we, again, in planning, I would like to make sure we all have at our fingertips the wide range of things that we have at our fingertips. So please indulge me if you'd be so kind.
yeah.
All right, gentlemen, we have no ladies here this morning, so I'm going to move towards close, but I'll open this up for any closing thoughts. With that, thanks everyone for being here, attending. Michael Rendler, again, as far as I'm concerned, is the E7 Architectural Studio technology that's going to be key to this. So I'll obviously be following up with you as soon as I possibly can. And you all have my contact information in the chat. So with that, this is the countdown for the last final thoughts or final words. Now is that time.
Thank you so much, Andrew.
Thank you, everybody. Happy July 4th again.
All right,
thank you
also for your time.
All right, very good. I'm going to end the call. Thanks everyone for attending.